Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle AI Summit. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speakers. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsor's virtual booth at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partner is committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So, at any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booth from the main agenda page, which includes complimentary materials and information. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce Larry Maisel, former adjunct professor at Columbia University Graduate School of Business, and Anna Tiomina, founder, CEO at Blend to Balance, an AI trainer and advisor. We are excited to have Larry and Anna with us for a keynote titled The Finance AI Center of Excellence. Welcome, Larry and Anna. Over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. Pleasure to be with everyone today. I hope today's earlier sessions went well. Anna and I believe our session is vitally important to each of you, and we'll try our best to make it interesting and informative. At the end, we welcome your questions and comments and encourage each of you to feel free to share your insights with others on the call. As you can see, Anna and I are friends and colleagues. And as Brittany mentioned, we each have our own practices, but we do collaborate on a number of areas and opportunities, not least in sharing these sessions, these webinar sessions with folks like yourself. And we're looking forward to the events of today. Well, one of the things that we're all encountering is this AI challenge that's confronting finance leaders. Recently, Gartner's reported that approximately 59% of finance functions are using AI. Wow, that sounds like a real adoption rate. However, LEK Consulting, in their 2025 Office of the CFO survey, showed only 11% of Office of the CFO reported that AI is as being meaningfully implemented within the finance function. Contradictory? Well, we see that, Anna and I see that as complementary. Gartner is capturing the breadth, any use of AI within the finance function, which might be knowledge management, it might be fraud detection, it could be even use of chat or Gemini or Claude to just answer straightforward questions. Whereas LEK is capturing depth that are embedded into the core financial workflows with ownership, control, and repeatable value within the finance function. Well, together, these studies highlight the central challenge facing CFOs. AI activity exists, but is AI capability? Does that not exist at scale? In other words, AI is running at the same barriers that finance teams have seen with other major transformations, operating model maturity. And so today's session, we want to focus not on what the problem is, but what is a viable, scalable solution for many of you. So we want to start with the concept is, what does it really mean to be AI enabled? Well, we think the most important insight from the Gartner work and LEK's studies is that finance functions are using AI, but they're not yet AI enabled. So what does AI enabled really require? We see it as minimally of four things. One, embedded in the core financial processes, in its workflows, whether it's payables, whether it's receivables, whether it's reporting, closing, forecasting. We see AI needs to be embedded. It's not a one off tool. Second, and we think this is critically important, is that governance and controls are designed in at the beginning. They're not bolted on or retrofitted onto these processes. The third criterion for being enabled is value. Are you tracking the value? Is it being optimized continuously? Is it being monetized? What is the value of having AI implemented? And fourth, and might be the most important, is the information trusted? Will you act on it? How do you how do you convince yourself and your leadership and your colleagues that it is not an hallucination, but it actually is the truth, and it's trusted so that you will take actions? So that leap from usage to enablement, it's not an organic thing. It's going to require an intentional leadership from the office of the CFO and a formal mechanism to scale responsibly. I'll repeat that, a formal mechanism to scale responsibly. Well, in the anniversary, Thomas Jefferson said 250 years ago, and it's pretty apropos today, if you want something you have never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done. Well, we believe the AI Center of Excellence in Finance is that mechanism, that will drive and result in the ability to scale and embed AI capabilities into your organization. And Anna and I will, in the next 15 minutes or so, will show how you can do that. But I wanted to dissuade anyone who's thinking that, the Finance Center of Excellence, it's a data science project. It's an innovation lab. What's another committee? We don't want another committee. We have enough committees already. That's not what it is. What it is about structural alignment. I use that word again, a mechanism designed to convert scattered AI activity into governed, scalable capabilities that finance can actually use and rely on. The purpose must be to align with finance's core responsibilities. We know what they are: accuracy, control, insight, trust. It's not about experimentation. It's about turning experiments into reliable operations. What we have found is that AI will not replace finance leaders. That notion has been dissuaded for many, many months, if not years already. But we do believe that finance leaders who understand AI orchestration will redefine the function, how to use it to create true value in the organization. So the future of finance is not going to be defined by how many tools you've got. Quite contrary, it'll be defined by how well those tools are governed, integrated, and aligned with strategy. And that is what we see as the vital, critical role of the Finance AI Center of Excellence. That is the structural mechanism to achieve that ambition. I want to take you through some quick design principles, and then Anna will take you through some more of the how-to. But the first one is finance ownership. The CFO-led accountability ensures AI aligns with financial controls, risk, and outcomes. It is the finance function that should be driving this. Next, it should be embedded. We talked about that. It should be embedded in your ERP, in your EPM, in the enterprise performance management, in your close system, in your workflows. It's not a standalone tool. It can be used for analysis, but it needs to be integrated into the fabric of your finance function. And as a former CFO, and one who still does it, and Anna, who does work with CFOs, we know what that's about. We've worked with small organizations and large organizations. It's got to be driven into the fabric of the function, whether that function resides centrally in the finance area or is decentralized into the operating units. The next, you need to design controls. Why? Because you need to be able to explain outcomes. It needs to be auditable and certainly compliant. Not only compliant with your own internal policies, but compliant with laws and regulations that are currently governing and will be more pervasive in governing AI usage in the coming future. And these need to be built into the model from day one. As I said earlier, it can't be bolted on. Next, like anything that's worth doing, you want to be able to measure its value. By measuring its value, you then can say, this is the benefit that we're getting, the classic cost benefit. Why do it? Well, because it is leading to these benefits, whether you use key performance indicators or improve those performances, whether you use traditional return on investment, return on capital metrics. As long as it's measured is what is the clear importance. And then talent and roles, and that cannot be understated. You need to be able to upskill your team, not reduce it, but upskill the team so you can leverage AI, not only for insight, not just making something more efficient. So with that, I have the pleasure to turn over the rest of the presentation to my friend and colleague, Anna Tiomina. Anna?
Thank you, Larry. That was amazing. And hi, everyone. I'm happy to take this over from now. And Larry explained in great details the concept of AI Finance Center of Excellence. And I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into how to actually implement it and what it consists of. So like Larry mentioned, governance is the first value proposition. I still see 40 to 50% of the companies of organizations that don't have AI usage policy. You cannot have it as an afterthought. It has to be in place from day one, and it has to be updated regularly to catch everything that is happening. Second, embedded AI beats standalone tools, meaning that if you want AI to be really effective and to be really working for your organization, it needs to connect to the data you can trust, and it needs to be inside the processes that already work. You can use standalone tools for separate projects, but the best way to start is to start with AI that is already inside the tools that you have. Third, value needs to be measured And there are various ways to measure it, but you need to understand what KPIs you are going after. AI can have different impact on organization, and efficiency and cost saving is not just the only one of them. If you're going after efficiency, you need to have efficiency KPI in place, forecast faster close cycle, more deliverables with smaller teams, something like that. If you are going after the real P&L impact, the bottom line impact, you have to understand how the AI translates into that and capture all the KPIs that lead to that. But you need to understand what you're going after, because if you don't, it's impossible to understand which of your projects are working and which are not. And therefore, you cannot scale your AI usage. And fourth, but to me, this is the most important, the way you talk to your teams, the way you enable your organization to use AI is probably the most important aspect of this project. We all, as finance executives, are moving to the world where we will be managing mixed teams of people and agents. I am already doing that. And it requires a lot of upskilling on all levels, a lot of redesigning the processes, a lot of creating product owners inside your existing functions. And we need to be very, very transparent with our teams about what we are doing and what is going to happen, because people are afraid to lose their jobs. So they need to understand what this exact project will have on their exact role. And I think we can move to the next slide, which is what happens without a center of excellence. And I think everybody in this room has something that you can share about how the failed AI implementation looks like. But essentially, these are several patterns which include a lot of pilots without really implemented projects. It includes inconsistent controls and increased risks to governance, audit failures. It includes shadow AI, which exists in almost every organization I work with. It has something like a blurred ownership between finance, IT, data science, operations team, when nobody is responsible for the real output of the project. ROI ambiguity erodes executive confidence, and when you're managing several pilots or several projects, you cannot explain what works, what doesn't. And of course, the talent confusion, when people don't understand what you're trying to do, what you're going after, they will not support your implementation. And even worse, if they are afraid that this new project will lead to them losing their jobs, guess what? They will block every step of that. So be transparent with your teams and try to build the center of excellence in the way that makes sense and has a best impact on the organization. And we can move to the next slide, please, which is the center of excellence operating model. Me and Larry think that it has 4 major layers. Layer 1 is model and analytics layer. What models are you actually using, how they work? The finance leadership needs to understand how these models work. It needs to be validated, version controlled, and reproducible. The second layer is governance and risk, and I cannot talk more about that. You need to have bias control, you have to have validation standards. My favorite principle is you deliver it, you own it principle. For every AI generated output, you need to have a person who is responsible for the quality of this output. You cannot have some abstract AI being responsible for something that is used for decision making. The third layer is operational integration. Larry spoke about that. It needs to be inside your processes, not somewhere on the side. And the fourth layer is executive oversight, meaning that these whole projects need to be managed top down, not bottom up. Executive leadership needs to connect everything to the strategy map. So the AI project is not something just leave somewhere in the room. It actually affects the strategy. It translates to improving bottom line or whatever growth KPIs you have. And this is how CFO and CEO stay in the loop without having to micromanage every step of the way. And when these four layers work together, it stops being a side science project and AI becomes a part of how finance actually runs. And this is what we mean by AI enabled. And the next slide, please. So integrating AI with this strategy is probably the key thing that needs to happen. The best teams that I've seen don't look at AI implementation as a side project. This is embedded directly in the strategy, in how the strategy gets executed. The strategy maps clarifies cause and effects. Then the analytics scorecard validates that your KPI relationships actually hold. AI forecast model predicts where those KPIs are heading, and then governance and controls keep the models reliable so they don't drift. And what does it give to you as a CFO and to your organization? There are three levels. First is efficiency, can be shorter cycles, can be less manual work. We're all under this pressure of doing more with less. This is one of the answers you could get to this question. Second is insight, better forecast, earlier risk signals. This translates to your organization competitive advantage. And last layer is agility. When you can run faster scenarios, make faster and better decisions, you get ahead of your competition and your organization develops better and faster. Organizations that scale AI without governance reduce costs at best. Not even all of them reduce costs, but organizations that orchestrate AI, they increase their enterprise value. So that's the bottom line here. And yeah, the next slide. So as a summary, there are 5 main things that we want you to take home. One, do not confuse activity with capability. Like we explained, these are different things. Second, a center of excellence is a management structure. This is not an IT project. This is not a data science project. 3, there are 4 design principles: embedded AI, governance, measuring value, and developing talent. All of them have to be on the table during any stage of the implementation process. It needs to be essential to the finance function. And with all of that in place, finance function drives enterprise value and not just builds report on top of that. So the question that we have to you is, where is your organization on that AI journey? How do you think you're placed around that? And we're open to your questions if we have any. So I'm handing the stage to Brittany.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for such an insightful session. As a reminder, audience members can still enter questions. And we did have a couple that came through, so I'll just pose this to both of you guys. The first question asks, for organizations just starting out, what does a finance AI Center of Excellence actually look like in practice? Is it a centralized team, shared services, or something more distributed?
Anna, I'll start.
Yes.
You please build on the answer. Especially when you're starting out, it's not a separate unit. Usually in a finance organization, even one that is quite small, there's an individual who has a talent, an interest, a knowledge, or a background. Make that person, it's a part-time role, but make that person the focal point, and then begin to communicate that we do have this center of excellence and what is the scope of it. And again, start small, build on little steps. So, for example, what would be an example of starting small? Well, as Anna pointed out, and I pointed out, have a articulated governance policy. Actually say what is the boundaries, the guardrails for using the AI in the different processes within your finance function. So then the next, again, build on that. Go, next one might be data governance issues. What is it? Make sure we have the security. But again, each one is a building block towards having the structural mechanism to have control over the use and value of the use of AI. Anna, do you want to build on that?
Yes. Yeah, I have two main things to add. First of all, I agree that this is almost never a separate team. The most value of AI implementation projects came from two levels of expertise. You need to understand the technology and you need to understand the business. So whenever you can get two of them together, can be through upscaling the existing people in the company or bringing in consultants or like external teams to help you with the tech part of that. But you need to put them together in one room. And it is usually not a full-time role. Only I've seen the full-time like people managing AI only in really big organizations. And it's usually something like a shared project or a project, cross-team project. And the three things that I think are needed to start, and this is what works for small organizations and for big organizations too, is you need to have a tool in place, a policy, a governance model, and to train people on that. So this is like the three steps that let you start. Okay, and then you build everything else on top of that.
Good.
Great. And we have time to squeeze in this one last question. Do you see the Finance AI Center of Excellence becoming a long-term function or more of a transitional model until AI capabilities are fully embedded across the organization?
Again, it's not a transitional mechanism. It is something that should be structured within the finance function. One of the things is that, and again, with a client that I've worked with, there was a center of excellence outside of finance for another area other than AI. And so one of the things that becomes important is to find ways to integrate the activities so that they become more cohesive and more aligned within the organization, so you're not running at cross purposes. But the simple and straightforward answer is it is not transitory, the Center of Excellence. It is something to be a permanent structural mechanism, but that doesn't mean headcount, and that doesn't mean a lot of cost. It means the policies and practices are governed and stay within the boundaries that have been defined for the proper use of AI in the finance function.
I agree. I agree that this is a long-term project. Because I haven't seen a company that could say, okay, we're done implementing AI. It hasn't happened. With the speed of change, there is always something else that comes up, and I don't see where it's gonna stop, right? So some organizations started 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago. Some organizations started last quarter, but the speed of change is so huge that you have to keep running just to stay in the same place. And this is why this center of excellence might be a like end game project at some point, but it is definitely a long-term thing.
Good. Thank you, Anna. Brittany, back to you.
Excellent, guys. Well, thank you so much again for such an incredible keynote. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. This does officially conclude today's Argyle AI Summit. So thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. We look forward to seeing you at our next Argyle event soon. Thank you guys again, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank everyone for listening.